Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm sure there will be people who will continue to come in as we get going here. Well, first of all, I just want to say welcome with a little bit of excitement because we are excited about today's panel and our program that we have put together today. How did you get that job? Exploring a career in student affairs and in academic advising. My name is Pat Hudgens, and I am the Associate Director at the K-State Career Center. And we are located in the Bernie Family Welcome Center. And I just want to hit a couple of highlights of what we've got going on this afternoon for you. We are going to meet our panelists and have a chance to interact with them. Well, not interact, they'll interact with you. And then we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A with the panel. Then there'll be an overview of a couple of programs, academic affairs and our student affairs, and our academic advising programs. And then we're going to have a little bit of an overview about a graduate assistantships that you might be able to connect with. And then after that, you know what, we're going to wrap up, but we're going to ask, first of all, that if you have questions that you'd like to ask of us, to please leave them in the chat. And Dr. Kevin Cook and Dr. Christy Kraft will do follow-up with those questions at the very end of the panel. So throughout the time, if you think of something that you thought, I'd like to know a little bit more about what that person just talked about, please take time to leave a chat question in the chat and we will address those. And so I think at this point, we're going to talk a little bit about etiquette and then we're going to let other people take it away. As you can see, we're just going to ask that you continue to remain muted. Also, feel free to turn your camera off to help with bandwidth. That really does help. And then please use the chat function as we mentioned, and then feel free to use reactions to engage with our presenters. And that is about all that I have to talk about right now for etiquette. And we just ask that if you have your camera on, then you're going to be asked to smile the entire time. So, okay, I'm going to turn that over to Dr. Stephanie Bannister now.
Thank you so much, Pat. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. We're really excited to be with you in this virtual space. So as we kick off our time with the panel, we gave them a unique challenge. We asked each of them to prepare a self-introduction explaining what they do, who they are and what they do. They have 3 minutes and 3 slides to do that. So we're going to bring up their individual slide deck and they will introduce and then we'll jump into our panel time.
Yat A, She Ne Arminta, Torachini Nishle, Nakai Bashichin, Kitlachini Doshache, Nakai Doshanula. That was a formal introduction to Navajo, my native language. Navajo is a matriarchal society, so our mother's lineage is what's passed down from generation to generation. My first clan is Bitter Water people. My second clan is the Mexican clan. My third clan is Red House people. My fourth clan is the Mexican clan. I was born on the Navajo reservation in Shiprock, New Mexico. I grew up in Bloomfield, New Mexico. I received my bachelor's degree in history from Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado. I'm a father of a 9-year-old son, and I am currently working in a 2-year grad assistantship through K-State Housing and Dining, in which I am working towards a master's degree in counseling and student development. I also help oversee the Jardine Apartments. Not only do I assist with the day-to-day operations of Jardine, but I'm also responsible for supervising a student staff team of RAs. That's them there in the picture. I'm very proud of them. My purpose is to ensure their success through support and advisement. Also, essentially, I'm a resource for resources, and if any of my residents or student staff need help navigating difficult situations or challenges, I'm there for them. It's fulfilling being Native American in a supervisor position, and it's rewarding in the sense that I get to share my culture and increase visibility for Native American students and Native American issues. Part of that work entails networking with different student organizations like the Native American Student Body and the Indigenous Faculty Staff Alliance here at K-State. This is only my second semester, but being affiliated with those organizations as a grad student has been great for my own development as well. My path to education, to higher education, really started when my son and I were living in a homeless shelter. I was at a crossroads in my life, and that's where I made up my mind and committed to improving my life, not only for me, but for my son and for my community. The desire to be a good father and to be able to provide stability and to have a safe place to live was a huge motivator for me. And part of the reason I became involved in housing. I became an RA at Fort Lewis, which I was an RA for 4 years. I have some quotes there, shared from the wise Uncle Iroh of Firo Nation. Sometimes the best way to solve your own problems is to help someone else. And that particularly was true for me, in that me becoming an RA and willing to engage students as an RA helped me meet my basic needs: food, shelter, and security. And from that point, I was able to commit to my community, my campus community, my family, and really blossom and grow. And now I'm here at K-State through those commitments. Thank you. I'm glad everybody's here.
Hello, my name is Sarah Buchanan, and I am an academic advisor in the Department of Psychological Sciences. And I'm also a mother of 3 children who keep me running around, and they also remote school. So I'm not only working from home, but I'm also taking care of watching their educational growth as well. My top 5 strengths are relator, maximizer, arranger, harmony, and developer. And honestly, I think those are a really good fit for my position as an academic advisor. So we'll just keep moving. Next slide. What is an academic advisor? Academic advisors work with students as they transition into and through college. It starts with major and career decisions, and that is as basic as choosing classes to explore and enhance educational experience. But sometimes we also have to send them on to other services to help explore those as well. We oftentimes work with students to find balance in their daily lives. So we're not just looking at their academic side, but we have to look at them as a whole individual. So we look at their balance, time management, self-care, and again, going back to other campus service referrals in case they need personal financial planning, or we often refer to Office of Student Life, tutoring. It could be a variety of things, including even just other extra and co-curricular learning opportunities on campus and off campus, which are really important. I do want to note, hold on just a minute. I do want to note that academic advisors' role can vary across campus, that other duties is assigned. Some advisors are full-time advisors, and some are just a portion of the job, as if they're a faculty member, or maybe they're an academic program coordinator, and that advisor role is part of their job. And so oftentimes we're doing other things beyond just what is noted here on the slide. And we also, a lot of advisors will volunteer on other committees and organizations, whether it be at the university level or national, in order to enhance academic advising as a whole. Okay, now Christy. How did I get to my job? Really, it started as an undergraduate student. I got incredibly involved in my student activities and community service. Actually, until I went to graduate school, I thought I was going to stay on the student affairs side because that's what I knew and that's what I enjoyed. After a 2.5-year break between my undergraduate and graduate year, I actually took a foundations and academic advising class, and that kind of put me on the track to the academic side of things. And then I got to where I'm at, and it's a great fit for me. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Clara Valadares Kent. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am a mom to a 2-year-old cat and a 9-year-old basset hound, and I oversee K-State Center for Advocacy, Response, and Education, otherwise known as the CARE office on campus. And our office provides confidential services to anyone who has experienced sexual violence, dating or domestic violence, stalking, or harassment. So our office has victim advocates, or survivor advocates as we're known, and we provide campus advocacy and prevention education to the campus community on those topics. So what every day kind of looks like for me, every day is going to be a little bit different. But as a survivor advocate, there are times when I'll meet with a survivor of many of those forms of violence that I've listed. And depending on their experience, that interaction could go multiple different ways. So it could mean going to court with them, helping them to get a protection order, or what's known as a restraining order. It might mean also helping them to get to the hospital to get a rape kit exam. It could also mean helping them through the reporting process, helping them to get academic accommodations if they had fallen behind in class due to their circumstances, or if they're needing to get a backdated withdrawal, get it caught up in their classes. We'll help them kind of form those connections with their professors and instructors, reporting to law enforcement or to the university. So those are kind of the things that an advocate might do with a survivor. Another big part of my job is writing grants, reading grants, sleeping grants, eating grants. I say this because it's part of my job that I never anticipated really. But if you're going into a helping service field, similar to this, a nonprofit, it's likely that you'll be involved in grant writing, reading, consuming of some sort. And so I put in this because this is the 5th year that we've received the Victims of Crime Act grant. We're very proud of that, and so that funds our office. Might also look like presenting to classes, student groups, staff meetings on consent and healthy relationships, on sexual violence and relationship violence, supervising staff meetings, lots of emails, project management. I love my team. We're a bunch of fierce feminists who are constantly supporting one another, creating culture change, and I'm not sure I would be here without them. Next slide. So how I got here, I had my bachelor's degree in family studies and human services from K-State. I started working as a police response advocate for the crisis center here in town, which kind of got me involved in this work. I went into my MS in counseling and student development here at K-State, and that's when I started as a GRA with the CARE office. Position became available and I applied for it, was selected. And then lastly, this last bit about, I was appointed to Governor Laura Kelly's Behavioral Health Services Planning Council. So this is actually not directly related to my position, but I share this last bit because I think higher ed has so many possibilities and opportunities. It opens doors for us to develop and grow in ways that I could have never imagined before. So I invite you to explore those interests because the possibilities are endless. So thank you.
Okay, I think I'm on. Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you to this panel for organizing and getting us all together. My name is Andrew Coles. I use the pronouns he, him, his. I am currently one of the assistant directors in the K-State Career Center here on campus. And I'm also fortunate enough to teach a K-State First course, Intro to K-State Culture, every fall. So definitely love that opportunity. So in my job, I meet regularly with students all across kind of hitting all aspects of K-State really. So first year students, freshmen through seniors, and then graduate students, so master's and PhD students. And I honestly think that's probably the best or most favorite part of my job is that there's always variety in the types of students that I get to work with and the type of opportunities I get to help them with. It's like every day I might start off helping a freshman student start getting their career documents ready for their first part-time job, maybe here on campus or in the Manhattan area. Then my next appointment might be with a landscape architect looking for work there. Then my next appointment might be with a PhD physics students looking to get a teaching job in academia or a research position in industry. So there's tons of variety in my job. And so that's why I really, really like working here at the Career Center. But let's rewind a little bit. Next slide, please. So as far as education goes, you can see my degrees that I have down there listed. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology in 2010, my master's degree in academic advising in 2016, and currently working on my PhD in student affairs and higher education here at K-State. And I think, you know, I really wanted to put the descriptions underneath my education heading there, because those are really kind of what I went through as going through the whole college process. So being a first generation student, a person of color, being from a single parent household, being from a low SES socioeconomic status household as well. And so that's kind of really what guided my entrance into pursuing these degrees, but yet it also guides my work. And I think I really liked how one of the other panelists had her top 5 on her title slide, and I wish I would have thought of that, but one of my top 5 is empathy. And I think I really have that ability to empathize with others because of many of these areas that I really can familiarize and associate myself with. Next slide. So as far as career trajectory, I guess, now I have been working in higher education for over 10 years now, experience in community college, private colleges, and now public universities. And so my very first job out of college was working with an Upward Bound program at a community college here in Kansas. Then I went back to my alma mater and started working as an admissions rep, but then it soon turned into an international advisor role as well. That kind of got tacked on. You know, us in student affairs, we always like to wear many, many hats. And that was at a private faith affiliated university. Then in spring of 2012, I got the amazing opportunity to do a work exchange with a partner in Northern Ireland. So I got to hop over to Belfast, Northern Ireland for a couple of months, and we can talk more about that experience in a little bit. But I never got that opportunity to have a global experience as a student. And so I was so fortunate to be able to have that administrative support behind me to be able to do that in my job. And then in 2012, I applied and got accepted to a job here at Kansas State University, first as an international advisor, so working with international students. And then in 2014 until now, I have been working in the Career Center. So that's kind of my little steps that I've taken to get where I am. And I look forward to answering more questions as we go. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Thomas Lane, Vice President for Student Life and Dean of Students. It's great to be here with you tonight. I've loved hearing everyone's stories. I said I've served as VP for Student Life and Dean of Students. I heard the strengths that were shared. So my strengths are achiever, strategic, individualization, input, and context. And so I get a chance to use those strengths quite a bit in my role as Vice President for Student Life. I am married to my husband, Cody. We have a son who's 19 named Julian, and we have 2 dogs, Gus and Junebug. I started my role as Vice President for Student Life and Dean of Students just a little over a year and a half ago. Next slide, please. So I thought I'd share with you kind of a little bit about what the Vice President for Student Life does. Our division of Student Life, as you can see on the screen here, has 18 different departments. We put students first by doing 3 things: building a sense of community at K-State, promoting personal and career well-being, and providing supportive resources. And my role as Vice President and Dean of Students is to foster an environment where students know that they belong, know that they matter, that they are enjoying a healthy sense of well-being, and where they have a robust K-State student experience. And what my work looks like on a daily basis includes helping our team stay focused on the strategic goals that we've set forth as a division, meeting with individual students who may be experiencing barriers to their success, having the opportunity to advise student organization leaders or consult with student organization leaders who are looking for ways to improve campus life, and engaging in dialogue with a number of different students and university community members on how to improve campus life. Finding additional sources of support for student life, for initiatives that we might want to put forth. Collaborating with other university community members on supporting students. We have almost 1,000 full-time staff members in the Division of Student Life and over several hundred student employees who help us work towards our division of supporting students in pursuing their educational excellence and personal well-being and lifelong learning. Next slide. I loved putting this slide together in looking at where I started and where I am or how it's going. In the middle of that first slide on the left, you can see a young man that has his hand on his face or on his chin there. That's me. That is me as an undergraduate at Illinois State University. I served as the chairperson of the Student Center Programming Board that brought events to campus. And that's really how I first got introduced to the field of student affairs. You'll see also in that slide about 3 people over from me to it would be my left side, a woman there who has her hand on another person's face. Her name is Tina. She was the graduate assistant for the Student Center Programming Board. And she was the one who introduced me to the field of student affairs and encouraged me to explore getting a master's degree in the field of student affairs at Illinois State University. And so for those of you who might be graduate assistants, this is a great example of the influence and impact you can have on a student's life. Tina certainly helped change mine. And I ended up working at Illinois State University after getting my master's degree in student affairs, serving as a graduate assistant in the student union, and then ended up working at Illinois State for 3 years as their coordinator for visitor and information services. My role was to set up the campus tours. That was the first job that I had in student affairs. And then I ended up working at Minnesota State University Moorhead as the assistant director for student union operations, and then also became associate director of the student union. And then in the field of student affairs, oftentimes, if you're looking to move up, sometimes you have to move on. And so I ended up applying for a position at Missouri State University. It was an assistant dean of students and director of their student union. And I thought I'd be there for maybe about 5 years, ended up being there for about 14 years. And rose up through the field of student affairs, through serving as an assistant dean of students, and director of the union, and then becoming assistant vice president for student affairs and overseeing housing and campus recreation and the student union, and then associate vice president for student affairs and dean of students, where I served the last 5 years before coming to Kansas State University and serving in the last year and a half as vice president for student life. So it's the guy on the right there. Hopefully you can see the smiling face behind the mask. It's been a great year and a half, and I've greatly enjoyed the last 28 years that I've spent in student affairs. And so I look forward to sharing a little bit more about my journey and experience as we go through the panel. Thanks all.
Good evening, everybody. It's so nice to be here. I'm Jeannie Brown Leonard, and I use the pronouns she, her, hers. And I love college. I grew up in a college town in Oxford, Ohio, home of Miami University. That image on the upper left is of the Upham Hall Arch. It's a special spot on the Miami campus, beautiful campus. My father was the director of the student counseling service, and I was able to grow up in this idyllic place and take courses at the university while I was in high school. But when it came to my college choice, I decided to go to Mount Holyoke College in Massachusetts, a small private liberal arts college for women. And in the image on the bottom, I'm the one in the blue, and those are my study buddies for chemistry class in my freshman year. And again, a very beautiful campus in the mountains of Western Massachusetts. And I loved it. I loved my experience. I learned a lot. I grew a lot. I had a chance to be engaged in leadership. And I was able to translate that experience at this one small liberal arts college to another, where I served as assistant dean of admission right out of college. And that was at Hamilton College in upstate New York. Next slide, please. And I've always worked in higher education, right? In some ways, it was in my blood because of where I grew up. But I could not have told you then that I would be the vice provost for student success at Kansas State University. In fact, I don't think a role like this existed in the late 1980s or 1990s. My unit grew out of the strategic enrollment management work here at the university. This slide reflects our vision and core themes of our work. I get to collaborate with really talented team of educators, both within student success and across the university. I have responsibility for promoting excellence in academic advising, for creating a coordinated care network to support our students, technology implementation, and ultimately cultivating, I would argue, an ecosystem of challenge and support using an equity lens. And note that vision statement does talk about all students, graduate and undergraduate, first gen, students from historically underrepresented groups. And that's important to my story as well. Next slide, please. So I worked in college admissions for 3 years and I loved it, but I was talking to prospective students and I wanted to think about current students. So I went to graduate school for a master's in higher education and student affairs at the University of Vermont. Parlayed that experience into career services work. I was an assistant director of career services at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, another small liberal arts college. And then my husband chose Miami for graduate school. So I found myself back in my hometown, serving as an academic advisor in arts and sciences, and later as an assistant dean in our School of Interdisciplinary Studies. I would argue there was a pretty important pivot point when I left Trinity. My students didn't really need me, and I wanted to be in a place where I was needed. And then in interdisciplinary studies, I became captivated by the learning experience that interdisciplinary education offers. So that was drove my interest in a doctoral program at the University of Maryland, where I focused on student learning and interdisciplinary learning. Moved then to a very complex, large public institution where I worked with adult returning students as a faculty member and ultimately as dean, overseeing the Center for Academic Advising, Retention, and Transitions. Basically, this really led to this other insight moment that education can be transformative. And I really reinforced my commitment to thinking about transformation and equity through the higher education experience and using collaboration to get there. And ultimately, I'm interested in making higher education student ready, to borrow Tia Brown McNair's phrase. It's a pretty important part of it. So not a linear progress by any means, but in many ways that diverse experience prepared me for where I am today. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Corey Williamson, pronouns he, him, and his, and I have the great pleasure and fortune of serving as the executive director of the K-State Student Union. Next slide, please. So before I talk about my role, I'd like to share a little bit about myself. So I originally grew up in Manhattan, Kansas. My mother moved to Manhattan from Kansas City, Missouri, when I was in grade school. And she was a single mother with 4 boys, and she came to Manhattan to attend K-State. And so she eventually graduated with a bachelor's degree, 2 master's degrees, and a PhD. And so her story is really what motivated me to pursue higher education. And so during my undergrad, I found my passion to become an educator when I was working as a student employee for TRIO programs and Gear Up programs. And so once I realized my passion for education, I had several mentors point me in the direction of our counseling and student development program here at Kansas State. And so I stumbled really into the student union work by the encouragement of my advisor, Dr. Doris Wright Carroll here on campus. And so I remember her asking me, had I considered the student union as a career path? And I said, of course I said no, as my interest really was in the area of working with youth programs like Gear Up and Upward Bound. But there was a GA position that was open within the union at the time. And so she encouraged me to apply for it. And it didn't take a whole lot of encouragement because as a broke college student, I needed to take an opportunity where I could find one. And so once I was offered the GA position, I really fell in love with union work. And so I was able to gain experience on both the program side of student union work as well as operations side. We also had the best union director in the country at the time in Bernard Pitts. And that was noted. He was actually that year acknowledged by a professional association with the highest award to be offered through the Association of College Union Internationals. So I learned a lot from him and the staff at that time. And so that's really where, like I said, I really fell in love with this work. So I've had an opportunity here, if you want to transition to the next slide. I've had an opportunity to work with at several universities across the country since I was a GA here. And so I started my full-time professional experience at the University of Akron. I served as the coordinator of operations there. I can't think of a better place where I could have launched my professional career because it was a great place where I could learn and make mistakes. And that happens a lot as a new professional. And so I was able to gain my footing, really enjoyed the experience of supervising students and engaging students in a variety of ways. But then my next position was at the University of Nevada, Reno. And so that was a recently opened facility, the Joe Crowley Student Union. And so I had an opportunity to oversee several functions within that union, the scheduling office, the marketing area, programs, IT, and as someone else said, other duties as assigned. And so this was really my first opportunity, not only overseeing student staff, but also professional staff. And then most recently, I was at Iowa State University and I served as the Associate Director of Operations there. It was a really large operation. The facility was a little older. They opened the building there at Iowa State, the Memorial Union, in 1928. It had undergone 11 renovations during that period of time, from 1928 to the time that I had left. And so there was much different challenges there. I mean, some original infrastructure there. They had a parking ramp adjacent to their building that my role was responsible for overseeing. Also oversaw the event management office there. I also had the opportunity to serve as an advisor to the Student Government Association in that role. And I also was the interim director for approximately 2 years at that institution. And so did a great job of preparing me for my current role as the executive director of the K-State Student Union. And so next slide, please. And so just a quick summary of my role here, or what we do here at the union. Our mission is to serve all, especially students, with facilities that provide services, programs, leadership experiences, education opportunities, which foster a sense of well-being and belonging in an inclusive community. And so we really view ourselves as the front door to campus, where we really serve as the hub of community here. And we are able to foster that community in a variety of ways, whether it be the services that are offered, food service, the bookstore operation, the various services that are provided for students in our facility. But then we also have programs through our Union Program Council. And once again, like I said, that's where I developed my passion for this work. And I know a lot of others. I appreciate hearing Dr. Lane's story, coming from a program unit at his former institution. But then we also offer leadership experiences. So we have a union governing board that we lean on to provide guidance that's made up mostly of students. But then we also have our student ambassadors who go out and communicate to campus and other areas in the community about what the union can offer to our students and to our community. And then of course, UPC has a leadership component there. And so really enjoy my work. I feel like I have the best job on campus unabashedly. And so really look forward to this conversation. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much to all of our panelists for taking that 3-minute challenge and for sharing their pathways and their stories. That achieved part of the goal of tonight, which was just to demonstrate how different and how unique the journey to working in the world of higher education can be. So we have prepared some questions for our panelists, but we also recognize you may be having questions going on in your mind as you hear our panelists talk. So don't forget that you can chat with Kevin Cook or Christy Kraft, and there will be a time at the end for us to unpack those questions. But right now, what I'd like to do is I am going to kick off with our first question for Sarah. And Sarah, I was wondering if you'd talk to us a little bit more about how you got introduced to this world of work in student affairs and academic advising.
So yeah, my uncle actually was kind of one of the first people that I knew in higher education, and he was on the student affairs. He ended up working through foundation and is currently a president of a university up in Minnesota. So I kind of already had that knowledge a little bit, but I really wasn't sure what all that meant. But as I got really involved as an undergraduate student in different student organizations and community service, I really had a mentor and advisor who oversaw all of that. So on that student affairs side, that really kind of pushed me a little bit in that direction. More so, okay, she didn't push me, but she gave me more knowledge about what it meant and that that was a possibility and an opportunity for me, because I did not want to do anything within my actual major. I was just completing the major so that I would have the degree. So I knew I would be going on to graduate school at some point. That's where I eventually kind of continued on in that student affairs side. And then once I got into my graduate program, which I did at K-State, I was on the administration track. I honestly thought that I would stay on the student activities, student affairs side. But then I took that, like I mentioned before, I took that foundations and academic advising course, and something like just kind of a passion ignited in me about that topic. And I was like, I think this is the path for me. And so then I began pursuing or looking for those opportunities. And I knew I wanted to stay at K-State because, you know, K-State's awesome. I had already been at worked at two other institutions as well on my way to K-State. But and then I ended up in my current position on the academic advising side. And I've been here for quite a while now, so I plan on continuing. That's my path.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing that. Andrew, sometimes when we try to explain the work we do in higher education, it's not always clear what that is. Could you maybe talk about the questions or the challenges that you had to resolve when making a decision to enter this field?
Wow. That's a hard question, Stephanie. Okay. So I think you're absolutely right that it is so hard to describe what we all do in our areas. And I know, I don't know, it wasn't that long ago, but someone talked about, I think it was for like higher ed, National Higher Ed Week. It was post what your official job title is and your main duties, because a lot of times your friends and family have no idea what it is that we actually do. It's like, oh, they work at the university, and kind of that checks off the box, and it's like, oh, okay. But aside from that, I mean, I really experienced it as learn as I go. And actually, I didn't share it in my intro, but what I should have shared is that my campus job, or my on-campus job at my undergraduate institution, that was really what led me into student affairs and higher education. So I worked in the Office of Admissions. I became a student ambassador, gave campus tours. Then a on-campus job popped up in the Office of Admissions. So I was giving tours, but also working in the office. And so that was really my first exposure to, you know, this is what you could do. This is a full-time job, helping students fall in love with your institution and really supporting them. Can you repeat the last part of your question, Stephanie?
If there were any other issues or challenges you had to resolve when you made the commitment to go into this field.
Yeah. I think the one thing that we've probably all experienced at some point is imposter syndrome. It's just thinking, you know, I am coming up this path, or, you know, I didn't experience this or that. And actually, you know, right now, the main college that I work with is the College of Architecture, Planning and Design here at K-State, as well as Arts and Sciences graduate students. And so I mentioned, you know, the types of appointments that I have before. So if you would have asked me in high school or in my undergrad, you know, what are you going to be doing, you know, as a full-time career, I would have never thought that I would be a career advisor to architects. Who in the world would have thought that at all? And so really, I think it's just learning as you go. And I think most every day, I just use my communication skills. And that's really what guides me through any of the situations that I have, whether it's, you know, advising a student, talking with an employer, teaching a course. It's all about how I communicate. And, you know, I always strive to be very genuine and authentic. And that's really what guides my work.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's really interesting that a transitional or transformative moment for you started with an on-campus job, and now you're serving in this role in the Career Center.
Absolutely.
Nate, here's my question for you. Could you talk a little bit about if there was time between your undergraduate and your graduate degree or not? And what would you recommend based upon the choice you made and how you transitioned between undergraduate and graduate school?
So the time between, for me, it was a summer. I graduated spring of 2020, and I began my assistantship in the fall of 2020. And for me, that really was an individual decision. So that type of decision really, it depends on the person. So you have to look at your situation. And there was a lot of personal reasons for me why I wanted to continue right away. Part of that reason is I'm 35 years old. So I'm a 35-year-old student. I didn't want to wait any longer to start a grad program. Not that I couldn't have done it a few years from now. I just feel like for me personally, I'd rather start down that path sooner. Also, I have a son, so that played a lot into it. I want to be able to start my career path while he's still a little younger rather than older. So those types of decisions are really important to consider. Your family, where the institution is, where you're at mentally. It's very important to be able to check in with yourself. If you need to take some time off between undergrad and grad school, then that's perfectly okay. I've had different professors give different advice. Some professors say you need to hit the iron while it's hot. Some professors will tell you to take a year off and go travel, go see the world and stuff. That's a little hard in today's current climate, but yeah, it just really depends on what you want out of your own experience and what you feel you're capable of handling. I would definitely also hold out for the schools that you want. It's okay to, maybe turn down a school that isn't on your highest list. Go ahead and shoot for the schools that you really want for. And if you need to wait till an opportunity opens up, then you navigate that situation as it comes up. So there's not a correct way to navigate your way to grad school. The path looks differently for everyone. That was in one of my previous slides. So it's just what you need to consider for you to be successful. That's ultimately it's your decision, and there's no wrong decision when you're pursuing success and trying to achieve your dreams. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's such a powerful reminder that it's not about comparing our journeys, that the journey will look different, but the things you gain throughout that journey prepare you so well for the work you're going to do in this field. So the next question I have, Corey, I think will be a fun one. It's for you. I was wondering if you could share with us one of the most fulfilling experiences you've had with working with students so far.
All right, very good. Thank you. So, this one actually is somewhat of a difficult question for me because every interaction that we have with students, or I say that I have with students, is unique. And they kind of have their own kind of special story or component that goes along with it. And so I've been fortunate enough to engage with students in a variety of, I guess, fashions, whether it be as an advisor, whether it be in the role of a mentor, in the role of a supervisor. And so trying to think back through what was the most fulfilling maybe is a little difficult, but what I will say is as I think back, maybe in my introduction into the field, particularly my first professional opportunity at the University of Akron, I will say that that experience sticks out to me. For one, because it was one of my first experiences for sure. But then I would also say it gave me an opportunity to engage with students at a level that I think is really unique when you are entering into the field, because your primary function and role is the student engagement. You know, it's not as much administratively focused. You're there to perform your duties, but your primary role is to really have an impact on students. And I feel like that was really my most fulfilling time. Going to the University of Akron, serving as a coordinator of operations. I oversaw initially a student staff of approximately 12 students. Wasn't an incredibly diverse group of students. It was essentially kind of a feeder employment opportunity for a particular fraternity group. And then upon my arrival, I wanted to be intentional about being inclusive as we can and creating opportunities for our students to gain employment through the student union. And so we went from essentially 100% male staff to 50-50 breakdown of male, female staff, variety of backgrounds represented there. But then I also was able to gain such a rich relationship with the students in a variety of ways. So not only was I a supervisor, but I did have an opportunity to spend time with the students and maybe serve in a mentor capacity and help navigate challenges and make sure that we create the opportunity for the educational experience with focus on your academics and things of that nature. And so I would say that was a very rich experience, and I appreciated the further I go into my career because of the genuine natural interaction and impact that I was able to have at that time, and still able to keep in contact with a lot of those students who have families now. I guess I hate to say it that way considering, but a lot of those students that have moved on and graduated and matriculated to the next level of life, but I just really enjoyed thinking back on that experience. So thanks for the question. It gave me an opportunity to reflect.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's such a powerful reminder that that's the gift of being able to work with students, is to be reacquainted and to learn and appreciate the way in which our community changes with each generation of learners. So thank you for that. Just a reminder, if you're hearing something that's triggering a question for you, don't hesitate to chat Christy Kraft or Kevin Cook. We'll have time for those at the end of these questions for the panel. Thomas, I was wondering, Corey got the positive, easy question maybe. I'm going to give you the challenging question. So could you speak to a time in this work that was particularly challenging for you? And maybe share with us what you learned from that and how you grew from that.
Well, I appreciate that question, Stephanie, and I'm not sure it is as difficult as you might have initially thought, because I'm currently going through it right now. As we have been navigating through the COVID-19 pandemic, I have learned more about what it means to be a student-centered student life professional than probably any time in the 28 years that I've been working in higher education. It's been a tremendous learning experience. And it was one that initially I thought, well, these aren't the kinds of things that they teach you in your graduate preparation program for college student affairs. But then I think back and say, well, I'm not sure that's the case. I think there are things that I learned in my program that actually have been very meaningful to me and very helpful to me as we kind of navigate through what's been unprecedented or uncharted times. You know, the importance of focusing on student well-being, the focus on ensuring that we have equitable educational environments, ensuring that we're continually looking for ways to creatively engage with students. I think all of those themes have been first and foremost of mind as we've navigated through this pandemic. We've learned how to creatively engage with students and had to do it very quickly in terms of moving many of our services that have traditionally been very face-to-face and in-person services to virtual services. And that was done in a very quick period of time. I think it's certainly the pandemic has uncovered or certainly reinforced issues of equity in terms of how the pandemic has disproportionately impacted, especially students of lower socioeconomic status or students of color, and how we provide support. And then in terms of well-being, how we're taking care of each other as a campus community, the messages we're putting forth in terms of navigating the pandemic in a way that helps mitigate disease and recognizes the connection that we have to others based upon the behaviors we engage in. All of those were things that we talked about many, many years ago. At least I talked about in my program many, many years ago. And so the other piece that I love about the profession that I've made a life in is that it continually is teaching me. And so this past year, from a personal development, a professional development, a growth area, soul searching, mind expanding, I'd say that this last year certainly has proven to be that. I feel very blessed to be in a profession where that continues to happen. That's pretty lucky. Thanks for the question.
I so appreciate you sharing that, because as someone who teaches a history class in higher ed and then has worked in a system for a long time, that is a silver lining of this moment, is that it's raised the heat and made more visible the work, and there's an urgency to it. So thank you for reminding us of the silver linings in this moment. Jeannie, I am going to call on you as someone who has had the opportunity to work at a variety of institution types. As you reflect on that and think about this new institution that you're part of, how important would it be, you say, for an individual to have an experience working at multiple institutions?
You know, I have really enjoyed every higher ed context in which I've worked, and I've used those opportunities to learn something about how organizations work, but really the biggest learning has been about me, right? That's where you encountering different people and different values and different principles. I think the diverse institutional types with which I've worked have guided me to find purpose, right? To want to work in environments where students are still becoming, where environments that don't kind of get their prestige by how many students they exclude, right? And there's a place for those institutions, and I attended one. And so I really needed to start in a place where I think I couldn't represent a school if I hadn't had a similar experience. So it's certainly in that mission space, moving into a similar kind of a work environment was important. But Thomas mentioned in his introductory comments that there's sort of this adage, right? To move up, you often have to move on. And that's partially because that's where opportunities are. But I do think one can learn a lot by engaging in those different different institutional types. Maybe not as the point. In other words, don't set out to do that because that's the thing you should do. Set out to maximize your learning. So think about what you want to learn next, and that I think can take you to those opportunities. And I think because of the way the structures work, likely that will mean going somewhere else for a while, but maybe coming back. So I love the pride people have in K-State, and would love to keep that talent here as well. But that diversity of experience is really rich.
Thank you so much. Clara, when I consider the work you do advocating for students on this campus, I'm not gonna lie, that's a challenging role. So why are you still here? Like, what's your why behind showing up and doing that really challenging work every day?
Yeah, this is a great question. Thank you for asking this. So I'm reflecting on this. First thing that comes to mind is that this work is needed. You know, I'm really thinking like survivors deserve compassionate services. So campus sexual violence and interpersonal violence continues to occur. And as long as it exists, this work is needed and my position and role are needed. And so when I'm thinking also, if not us, then who? You know, surely there are multiple people who are qualified to do this work, but I'm also in a unique position where I feel that I can contribute in a positive way to reduce harm, improve policies and services to survivors. And I have the institutional knowledge and background and experience to better serve students because of those things. So I spent many years now training and learning about campus sexual violence and how to support student survivors with evidence-based trauma-informed support, and feel best prepared to offer that right now. And so those are some of the reasons that I feel very propelled to remain in this position, knowing that I have those abilities and those skills that I can offer. You know, K-State is my alma mater. I've been here since 2010 with my undergraduate degree, then grad school, and now working here. I have a strong love and respect for this university and the folks here. And so this is where I've felt a strong connection to be able to improve some of the things that are offered here. I would also say that my life centers around dismantling systems of oppression like misogyny, racism, systemic racism, and discrimination. And as I mentioned earlier, my team is a huge reason that I'm still here. They're passionate and caring, funny. They, you know, bring some humor into this devastating work sometimes. And I'm just reminded of how important this work is and that cultural change can be made and is being made every day by members of my team. And then I think lastly, as I reflect on this, I think representation matters a lot. And so I'm a first generation immigrant, I'm a bilingual woman of color, and survivors and students and everyone need to see that those identities are represented in leadership roles. So society needs to see and respect women of color in positions of power and leadership roles. And so for those reasons, I continue to feel emboldened in my position and will continue to raise others in support as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Clara. That gave me the chills to hear you articulate that in such a beautiful way. And as I heard you reflect on the power of the team you work with, that really brought to mind that, you know, we often spend more times at work, at our job, than we do with our family. So really liking the team that surrounds you and being with people committed to doing that work is a powerful space versus going into a job where maybe you don't have that same sort of team dynamic. I'm actually going to toss it over to Kevin and Christy as questions may have come in.
All right, I have the first question. There are a few of you on the panel who have your PhD or are pursuing a PhD. So if a couple of you would want to address what kind of led you to make the decision to pursue a PhD and kind of go that route.
Kevin, I apologize. I had a little trouble hearing the question. Would you mind repeating it?
Sure. There are a few of the folks on the panel who have a PhD or are currently pursuing a PhD. And so if that's the case, what kind of led you to that decision to go that route?
I can start. So I received my PhD fairly late in life. I started my PhD work when I was working full-time at Missouri State University, and I received my EDD in educational leadership and policy analysis from the University of Missouri. But I was working full-time, and I was serving as an assistant vice president. And the next logical kind of, if I was going to wanting to move forward in my career, would have been the vice presidency. And so I gave it a lot of thought because it was a big commitment. It's you know, it was could be anywhere from 2 to 5 years that in terms of the entire commitment. You know, I gave it a lot of thought, and was glad that I did so, because again, it provided a great opportunity for learning more about the profession that I had made a commitment to for several years, and then also to have that terminal degree, and the process of going through and completing a dissertation, and really getting a deeper understanding of the theoretical work behind, or the theoretical concepts behind the work that I've been doing. And then be able to also have the professional experience at that time in my life to kind of reflect back on and be able to draw from when I was going through class assignments or through papers that I was writing, to be able to draw on that. By that time, I think I've had 25 some years of experience working in higher education. And so certainly have worked with colleagues that have gone straight on through to get their PhD or EDD, and there's certainly merit for that as well too. But for me personally, I was glad I waited a little while. I felt that I had a really rich experience. I knew why I was there, and I was able to, I think, contribute as a colleague with my classmates.
I could add on a little bit to that, Thomas. I think you've got to want it, right? You've got to really want it. This is not just a journey you take because it seems like the next thing to do. And I'm a little bit of a nerd, and I was really interested in a set of questions about how students learn, and that was what really drove me. I think I thought I wanted to do my PhD at some point, and as many of you have described already, life happens. I'm the youngest in my family, and I was sort of the primary point person for my aging parents. And actually I had taken the GRE and was ready to go, and my dad got very sick. So I put that plan on hold. He died actually in 2000, and I finally got to grad school in 2003. And I'll confess, I was 40 years old, and I had 2 children and a partner, and I needed their support, but I was able to apply and get a fellowship and go full time. So in 4 years, I was able to do my doctoral program, and I did that exclusively. I mean, there was assistantships and all those things that go with it, but it was important to me to dedicate, kind of be a full-time student during that time. We ate a lot of hamburger helper. There was a lot of sacrifices across my family, and my son at one point said, "Mommy, I don't think I want to get a PhD." And that was my wake-up call that I wasn't balancing it quite very well. And I learned how to be present as a mom when I needed to be present as a mom, and then focus on my schoolwork. So that meant later nights. But I figured that out as we went along. And ultimately, they're proud of me, which is really great. I actually was able to wear my father's doctoral robes when I got my degree. He wasn't physically with me, but he was with me for moral support. But I knew it was necessary to do the kinds of things I wanted to do in higher education. And I thought at the time, I thought I wanted to be a faculty member, and I was for a while, but I'm actually more of a scholar practitioner. But you've got to want it. I've done research on the doctoral experience, and you can be a very good course taker and not necessarily a good independent researcher. So you're being able to parlay the good course taking to build relationships with both peers and faculty so that you make it to the finish line, because there are a lot of folks out there who are ABD.
I'll jump in here too. So I'm the one that's currently pursuing a PhD, And I think, before I can talk about that, I have to rewind a little bit. And so when I started at K-State, I did not have a master's degree, and I hadn't even started my master's degree. And so I was like, I just got done with a bachelor's degree. I got a job in higher ed right away, and I just didn't feel like really called to jump right into that master's program. So then after some time at K-State, I realized, if I want to move up the ladder, or even, honestly get that respect in a way from having that next level degree, that I felt like I should start that. But honestly, the big motivator was the benefit of working at a university that you do, at least at K-State, get one class paid for every semester. And so honestly, that was my big motivator, because I did not want to get more student loans. I did not want to have to be in a lot of more debt. And so that's really what called me to it. So I took one class a semester, started in 2014, got done in 2016 with my master's degree. And honestly, because I pursued my master's degree, that put a hold or a deferment on my undergraduate student loans. And because I took one class a semester, they were deferred all that time. And so honestly, that's the only reason I have my undergrad student debt paid off, is because that was in deferment while I was doing my master's degree. So it was actually a double win for me just because of that. But honestly, the big motivator to go on to the PhD is honestly my office, my colleagues. Within my own office here in the Career Center, so many of us have pursued and completed our master's degrees and supported each other in doing so. And I have to always give props to our director, Dr. Keller, for being so supportive of us pursuing higher degrees. And so really then seeing one of my colleagues go through getting her PhD, and also her being a constant cheerleader saying, you need to do this, you need to do this. And of course, I could not just jump in it solo. So of course I had to grab another colleague and say, hey, let's do this together. And so we did. And so again, very same thing, just one class after another, just one every semester. And now we started that in 2016, 2017. And now we have about 4 more classes to take for our coursework before we jump, full into our research and dissertation work. And so, it's just really interesting. And so I'm also kind of like Dr. Brown Leonard, where I don't see myself as a faculty member per se, but definitely more as a practitioner. And honestly, I will be honest too, the only reason I'm doing a PhD is only because K-State doesn't offer an EDD in student affairs and higher education. Had we offered an EDD, I would definitely be going that route versus the PhD, because it is more practitioner focused. But that's my 2 cents anyway.
Thanks to all of you for sharing that perspective. I think it is really important to think about kind of where your career is taking you and what you think you might want to do with that before jumping into that next educational hurdle, because it is not for the faint of heart. I can attest. Both Thomas and Jeannie touched on this idea that to move up, you have to move on. But many people, for a whole host of reasons, might feel like that they are location bound or place bound. How or what advice would folks give about moving up or gaining more experiences if you can't move somewhere else? Looks like y'all are having trouble hearing me. Is that any better?
Yeah, Kevin, I apologize. I'm having trouble hearing your question.
Can you hear me better now?
No, not as good as before. I typed in the chat, so I believe
Okay.
the question is related to, for people who are place bound, who can't necessarily move on to move up, what sort of advice do you have to help them gain more experience and progress in their career?
That's a great question. I think about my when I was at Minnesota State University Moorhead, my director of the union was very young, and so I knew that if I wanted to be a director, of a student union, unless something was going to happen with Karen that she was going to move on somewhere, which she wasn't planning on to do that. You know, I needed to make a decision. So one of the things that I did was figure out how could I have also not just depth of experiences, but breadth of experiences. And so if you're looking at staying at an institution, and there could be a variety of reasons why you would want to do that. How can you identify breadth of experiences so that if a position would open up, perhaps it's not the next natural progression in that functional area that you're in, but perhaps it could be in another area within a similar or functional area that there's a lot of transferable skills and transferable experiences that you could work to make yourself an attractive candidate for that. That'd be one strategy that I would think about.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and jump in at this point for a question for any of the panelists. And that is, how do you go about building a sense of community, even though you yourself might be new to it in this career field?
I'll jump in on that one. Well, for me, it was really about networking and just finding people that I could talk to, finding groups that I was genuinely interested in. And well, before, so I joined certain groups, well, for example, like the Native American Student Body, as a person and as a student rather than an assistant community coordinator. So I put my interests first, and then I was able to connect with a group of students, and now we're moving forward and supporting each other and building community. And that's one way to go about doing that when you're in a new place. Also, it's a great way to meet friends who are, you know, who are going to be there supporting you and who know what it's like to be going through a program and have the pressure of homework and family life and things like that. So having a group that you can relate with in different ways, not only just academically, but maybe you share an identity or an interest. That's really important. And also just better for your own support system and mental health. So
yeah, and so this is Corey. I think they hit it right on the head. I don't know if there's much else to add, but I guess I would offer the importance of reaching out for that community. So identifying those interest areas and seeing what's available at the institution that you're a part of that you can engage, whether it's an affinity group, whether it's an interest area, whether it's material book club of some sort, or even if it's an educational pursuit. From my experiences, I think that's where those relationships are built. But then also even in your work and what you're trying to accomplish, you know, there is never a shortage of committees on a college campus. I can tell you that. And so engaging in committee work allows you to meet others beyond just your department or even beyond your division, quite frankly. And so I think those are points of contact that I think community can be built and you can flourish in those areas.
I would just like to add real quick, it's just that, you know, when you do join, you know, an office or a department within higher ed, you know, you kind of have this dream aspect, or maybe you've had exposure that, you know, has inspired you to join this field, but, you know, there's not that 100% guarantee that it's going to feel the same, be the same, look the same in your first destination career in higher education. And, you know, for instance, when I first came to K-State, I did not have that great supportive atmosphere that I was hoping for. And it was only because of my outside connections outside of my department or office that really not only kept me in higher ed, but kept me at K-State. I was lucky enough to work with numerous offices outside of my main office, and that's really what then got me to get other connections, and then really what led me to my current position here at the Career Center. And so I think it's just important, and maybe that's the realist in me, but just to understand that, you know, it might not be what you expect, and that's okay, but don't give up on the whole field. Definitely explore other areas, reach out to people outside of your direct influence, and yeah, check things out and explore.
Thank you very much. And for the sake of time, there were a few other questions, but I would encourage those individuals whose questions were not answered to reach out to some of the individual panelists to get those questions answered. And I think that they would all be quite willing to do that. So I'm going to introduce myself here briefly. I'm Christy Kraft, and I'm a professor and interim chair of the Department of Special Education Counseling and Student Affairs. And I just wanted to take a moment, and hopefully your interest has been piqued in the career fields that have been discussed this evening. So I wanted to just take a moment to let you know that we have some graduate programs here at K-State that might be of interest to you. I'm going to just talk about it for just a minute here and invite you to contact me later if you'd like to learn more about these. But we have a master's degree program in student affairs. It's called the Masters of Science in College Student Development. It's a 39 credit hour program. Most of our students who are in that program are able to complete it or choose to complete it in 2 years with some summer coursework in between those 2 years. We also have a doctorate in student affairs and higher education as well here at K-State. We have 3 opportunities right now in the area of academic advising. One is a graduate certificate. It's a completely online program, 5 3 credit hour classes. We also have a completely online 30 credit hour program, a master's degree in academic advising program. And then our newest program is a cohort program that's a doctorate in leadership and academic advising. And it's also completely online. And so, you know, if at any point you're interested in learning more about these programs, certainly reach out to me. I'd be happy to share with you the details about the programs and any other information that you might be interested in hearing. I also wanted to point out that because I know there's a great interest in academic advising among the participants here tonight, that the Global Community for Academic Advising, NACADA, is located right here in Manhattan, Kansas. And it's affiliated with K-State. It's a great professional association for individuals who are in academic advising or who are interested in pursuing academic advising as a career. So if you get a chance, go ahead and look up NACADA and see if it might be something of interest to you. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Kevin Cook now.
All right, let's see if you can hear me. Can you hear me better now? I hope so. Looks like my mic thing is jumping more than it was before, so that's good. Some of you might also be interested in some graduate assistantships. And we as a group of folks who kind of do student services, student support work across campus, have tried to make that a little bit easier for folks who might be interested in assistantships by centralizing aspects of that process. So currently we have 8 different assistantships opportunities that have been posted for next year that are listed on the actual academic department website. And there is also a link to an application also on that website. The due date for that is March 5th of this year, obviously at noon. It requires, you know, a resume indicating what positions you might be interested in. The position announcements and all of the specifics about the positions are on that website. And then we share that information out with the various departments that have openings. And then from there, we'll identify candidates to actually participate in a visit day. Normally, that would be some sort of hybrid visit day where some folks might be on campus, some folks might be via Zoom. Obviously, this year, that will be an entirely virtual process, but you will still get the opportunity to visit with folks based on kind of their interest in you as a candidate and your interest in their assistantship. These assistantships aren't just within the Division of Student Life, but also are in student success and some other affiliated areas within the university that do student affairs or student services type work that we think graduates that are, or folks that are in this program would find helpful in their careers. And then additionally, Housing and Dining Services has a separate assistantship process, and you can just submit a resume, cover letter, 3 references, and an unofficial transcript to this email you see here listed here, reslife@ksu.edu. And then the position descriptions for those are also listed on our Housing and Dining Services website under Resources and Employment, and you can find those things there. So we know that going to graduate school often requires some additional financial support, and the out-of-classroom experiences that an assistantship provides definitely can help supplement the learning that's happening in your classes also. So please check out these opportunities if that's something you're looking for.
And finally, we wanted to make sure that we leave you with our email addresses for additional information here. If you're interested in anything that we just shared, some job searching insights as well, you can contact Pat Hudgens for that. So please reach out if you have any questions. And I want to I'll say thank you. And then if anyone else wants to say anything as we wrap things up, feel free to do so. But thank you to the Career Center, Student Life, Student Success, my colleagues in the College of Education, and to our panelists for a very enriching conversation. I think it was insightful. It was community building. And I just want to thank everyone who was involved. So on that note, I'll ask if there anyone else who's been involved in the planning of this who would like to say anything.
See, I just wanted to say, as you did, we can't say thank you enough for everybody who has attended today. I was thinking maybe somebody attended today for themselves, or maybe they attended as a resource for someone else. We know that we are all great resources for other people within our programs or people that we come in contact with. So we just say share broadly and share widely. And also we wanted to make you aware that this program is also taped. And so if you'd like to share that link, and we'll get that, make that available soon for people to be able to share. And then I just wanted to just do a quick little thank you before Stephanie comes on to say thank you so much for Clint and for Jerry. They are the support team that helped us kind of connect with our team and everybody else. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bannister to wrap us up for ending.
All right, and I'm going to wave goodbye. Thank you everybody for joining us. Don't hesitate to reach out to any of us if we can get you more information.